Now let's say you are done for the day and you want to put your painting tools away, including a paint. Let's say you are going to paint again tomorrow. You don't have to worry about saving the paint. You can just close the whole box and store it away. So I will show you how you can do that. So you just close this flap on the side. Make sure that the little spacing bumper is not going to hit the paint on the palette. That's why I recommend having this marker. I use the Sharpie to mark this no parking zone on my palette. So every time I squeeze out the paint on the palette, I look at this mark and I don't park any paint here. So when I close this flap, it's not gonna hit any paint. Then you just simply close this down. Make sure that nut on the back are nice and tight so that it's securing your canvas, and close it. And when you close, you need to make sure that there's a little bump sticking out on the palette. You see a little bump? This is to prevent this palette drawer from sliding out from the box when it's being transported. So that's why you need to close this with this bumper, this bump aligned to this hole. And close the latch. Then you can just take this upright and store it anywhere like this, or this is just a little bit like this. You can do either way, but this will stay nice and secure if we are painting tomorrow, or like if you just need a short break. This is perfect way to take care of your tool. Now let's say you are not gonna paint tomorrow and you are thinking about painting after a few days. Then you're going to have to put this in the cold room to slow down the drying time of the oil paint on the palette. And the best way is to freeze this. By freezing, you are minimizing the airflow around this palette. Oil paint dries by oxidation, which is by reacting with oxygen in the air. So it's different from water-based medium or water-based paint that dries by evaporating. So it's different from watercolor or acrylic paint. So, and for the same reason, keeping this in the freezer also minimizes the air movement around the palette. Does that make sense? If you have a big freezer, you can use a special Tupperware made for painting palette like this one. So it's very big, it's almost airtight, designed and made for the painting palette. This is 12 by 16. That's the smallest they have available that I can find. It seals the air movement around the palette. So what I would recommend if we are taking break from painting for several days, and I would put this in the palette box and seal this with the cover. So this is a special Tupperware that you can buy only from art supply store or Amazon. This is one way to save your palette. And I will show you another solution if you don't have a big freezer to store this. So here's what I recommend if you don't have a big freezer. This is Airtight watercolor palette. So it has this ratchet and close nice and tight with this gasket around it. I already have some paint in here. I forgot to put this in the freezer, so the paint is very dry, but I can feel that the paint inside the skin is still squishy. This is still wet. So I'm gonna clean my hand with a baby wipe. So you can use this to save your paint. I'm gonna make some room. I don't recommend using the wells because it's hard to remove the paint and it's hard to clean. I have some paint dried up here and try to chisel out. I haven't done a very good job removing all the paint from the well, so I decided to start using the wider mixing area for the oil paint. So I'm just gonna scrape and make some room. So this is still squishy, but this part is really hard, so I can remove this. I can use this razor blade to just wiggle this paint off. So this yellow is still good. So this gray is pretty much dry, so I'm gonna get rid of this. Unlike acrylic paint, it doesn't peel off easily. So you just have to work it around. And again, I don't wanna create too much scratch mark on the plastic palette here, so I'm just gently using the diagonal movement. Now the surface is nice and clean. How about here? Maybe I can remove this too. So when the time comes, this cleaning tip will become super handy because no one teaches you how to deal with this. Just gonna get rid of this red too. So basically for wet paint, I use this mixing palette knife, and for the super dry paint, I use the razor blade to clean the palette. Now I'm gonna get a little bit of clean Gamsol on the paper towel. Then I'm gonna clean this. You see the paint starts dissolving. Even though it was dry, because it takes about 6 months for the typical oil paint to completely cure. So you can still clean this up with paint thinner, and in this case we're using Gamsol. I'm gonna get more Gamsol. This. It may not become completely clear again. What I'm looking for is to have no dry paint flakes on the surface. And I don't want to mix additional white into my paint that I'm going to store, unless it's gray that we already know that it has some white in it. Otherwise, I don't want to put white in the black pile, for example. Okay, so now this is ready, and I'm going to transfer the paint that I want to save. Okay, so here's the thing. I have a lot of gray here, and so once I'm done with the grayscale, I'm going to mix everything in. But if you are to rework on your grayscale later, then you don't have to do this. It's too much trouble. So you just close the pochade box like I showed you earlier, and you have everything laid out and ready to paint. And you want to store your paint in the coldest room or big freezer if you can. But if you don't have the palette box that I showed you with blue lid, the best you can do is to put the whole pochade box all packaged and put it just outside, especially if you live in Northwest like me, or live in Alaska. In the winter time, it goes down to below freezing, so it's perfect. The pochade box is varnished, so a little bit of moisture will not destroy the box. But if you are not going to use this gray, what I recommend is to blend all this gray together and create a big gray. And this big gray pile will become my paint modifier for my future paint project. Like you see, I'm gathering all my dirty paint, including this spare. I think I'm gonna save this permanent rose in the spare section, but anything that has contamination with white, I'm gonna make big pile of gray. And if I want to neutralize something, I can utilize this messy gray to neutralize. Maybe I'll add a little bit more blue already in here to make it not so pink, because otherwise everything will become pinkish when I try to use this as a modifier. So I'm neutralizing this in here, making this is good enough. So the key is to blend this as much as I can on the palette without any swirly thing or stripe. All right, now I can scoop this up and put this on this palette. Do the same thing with black. So just like the palette, I want to have a similar layout so that I'm not mixing up with dark color and light color on this storage palette. So I'm going to move this down further down. Okay, so like for example, you can transplant this permanent rose on here. Wipe palette knife, and I'm gonna gather this blue, and I'm going to transplant it here. Now I have my custom black here. So it's just like this on my main palette. Maybe I'm gonna move this over here so I have more space for white. I wasn't planning very well at the beginning. The key is to put the white and the black as far apart as possible so that they are not mixed. Now I made some space for the white. So now I can just transplant it, make it flat so that it's not going to touch with the other side, right? And you just close this. I even wrote my name and what's in it so that the people who open the freezer won't freak out when they open this thing and touch the paint. And this solution is super helpful when you're traveling too. Okay, now I'm cleaning this mixing area with clean paper towel first. So the palette doesn't have to be completely clean because you guess it, we always lay our fresh paint in the same spot. I'm gonna use a little bit of clean Gamsol and soaked in a paper towel and wipe it. Some people even use cleaning alcohol to completely clean this. That's fine too, as long as you don't mix with the paint that you are going to apply on your paint, because the cleaning alcohol will evaporate very quickly, so it doesn't leave any film in here. And I'm gonna close this on the side, and I'm going to put this in the freezer, and I'm going to put this away from my desk so I can use the desk for something else. So that's how you manage the tight studio space.